Hello and welcome back to the Brain Boost channel. So today we're going to be talking about hormone classification and their synthesis. This is just going to be a brief explanation of the hormone types and how they are synthesized and functions and all such associated with that. So let's just get into the video. So let's start with our four groups. We have peptide and protein, bioamines, steroids, and eicosanoids. So let's just jump right in. So peptide hormones. Basically, they are hydrophilic. Examples of them are growth hormone and ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. So the synthesis of peptide and protein hormones are that we start with a pre-pro hormone, as you can see, that is synthesized in the rough endoplasmic reticulum here. And what happens is that the signal peptide, there's a signal sequence on it, if you can see, that is basically going to get cleaved off, and it now is called a prohormone. So we go from pre-pro hormone to prohormone, right? So it is going to be packaged up into a vesicle and sent off into, or sorted into the Golgi apparatus. Okay, so now our prohormone, which we're going to look at over here now, in our secretory vesicle, it's going to get cleaved into an active hormone, as you can see there, and one or more peptide fragments. Okay? So that is the final step here, and then it's ready to go. It's going to get sent off to leave into extracellular fluid and to continue on and do its role. Next up we have biogenic amines or bioamines. So basically they are amines are chemicals that have an amine group, so an NH2, that is attached to a carbon. So that's chemically kind of what it looks like. And amines are synthesized from amino acids, right? For example, here we have serotonin, a hormone that is actually originating from tryptophan, right? Another amino acid is tyrosine that is also used to make bioamines. So if you, for example, for serotonin, if you've ever heard of 5-HT, that is earlier on in the serotonin production or synthesis process. So basically the synthesis here is that you start with a precursor molecule. You start with your precursor amino acid tryptophan, and you're going through a whole version of steps that's going to get you to your final product, which is serotonin. But for catecholamines, a pathway that has been elucidated for their synthesis is called the Blaschko pathway, which I will not be getting into this video. This is just a brief summary. So moving on to steroid hormones. So steroid hormones are actually based on cholesterol. So cholesterol is the derivative of it, and they are produced in our gonads or the adrenal cortex. So when you think of gonads, you're thinking testosterone, and for the adrenal cortex, you're thinking of something like cortisol, for example, right? And we have three major classes, or three types of steroid hormones, which are glucocorticoids, reproductive hormones, and mineralocorticoids. So an example would be, so for glucocorticoids, an example would be cortisol. For this one, for reproductive, it would be estrogen. And for this one, for our third, it would be aldosterone, for example. So as for the synthesis, let's just move over here to the right and look at this image. Basically, it's synthesized on demand. So steroid hormones, they're not stored. They're synthesized on demand, and how it's done is you get enzyme modifications to cholesterol in the smooth ER, but the process also occurs kind of in the mitochondrion as well. So let's get into it. So we have ACTH, which we mentioned earlier as an example of a peptide or protein hormone, and this is our adrenocorticotropic hormone, okay? So it's going to hit out here It's going to allow cholesterol to dock on the mitochondrion, right? Now we have something called STAR and P450-SCC. So STAR is what transports, it's the transport protein. It's going to regulate the cholesterol's insertion or transfer into the mitochondrion. And P450-SCC catalyzes the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone. So that's what we're looking at now. We're in the mitochondrion and we're dealing with pregnenolone. Okay? So then, basically what happens is this gets transported and we get modifications of pregnenolone in the smooth ER by a bunch of enzyme complexes, like isomerases, etc., whatever. And basically, in the end, we get like cortisol. That is, like I said, an example of a steroid hormone. And we said cortisol was a glucocorticoid example. So that would be that. Production of cortisol, that's kind of how that happens there. And yeah, so that is steroid hormone production. The last one here is eicosanoids. So these are short-lived hormones. An example of eicosanoids are prostaglandin, and they have multiple functions, which we'll get into in a bit. So let's just look at the synthesis. So the synthesis actually starts with basically what it is it's enzymatic modifications on arachidonic acid, which is a fatty acid, okay? So the arachidonic acid is actually cleaved from the membrane phospholipid here via phospholipase A2, okay? So we have arachidonic acid, and then we go through the cyclooxygenase pathway. So prostaglandins, which is the example that we're using here, they actually target cells in their immediate distance or vicinity. So they're actually paracrine. If you think back to the basics that you learn about cells and how they work, there's autocrine, paracrine. So this is paracrine. It's going to affect the nearby things, the nearby cells. So prostaglandins also have multiple functions here, which are, for example, pain sensitization. That might be something that rings a bell for some of you. Inflammation, things like that. So that is our hormone classification and their synthesis. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and comment if you have any other questions related to this topic, or comment if you have any other video topics you would like Brain Boost to cover, and you'll be sure to see it in an upcoming video.